O-O-T-C. Hey, that's cool.
You got a podcast?
Well, I didn't know that.
That's cool.
Now you do.
Welcome. We are back. Oh, that's cool. OTC's very own podcast on all the amazing people we work with right here at Ozarks Technical Community College. I am Jared Durden, and with me as always
This is Andrew Crocker. How you doing, sir?
Good, and I have a word I want to try out with you that I've invented.
You've invented a word.
I've invented a word.
Okay.
If you teach a class, you may be able to start using this word. It may connect with you.
Okay.
Procrastinating.
Procrastinating? Sure.
So how would you define procrastinating?
Well, so obviously the obvious answer is you have those things in Canvas. They're telling you have those things left to grade. That number is screaming at you. And I don't know what makes you for me, it's always a little bit of anxiety. If I don't grade them right away, I get anxiety that I'm not grading them. And sometimes that makes the problem worse in my own head. What do you think?
So this is my definition of procrastinating.
Yeah.
Because it's something I do. I keep catching myself doing.
Yeah.
Well, there's kind of two forms. One is instead of doing something in life that's harder or that you need to get to, you grade some easy things because it's like, I'd rather do this than mess with that. So you're still doing something productive. The other way is that you've got this list of things to grade and you grade the easier thing, the quicker thing first that maybe isn't the most pressing.
That has never, what you're describing is that how procrastination works for you? You do the easier stuff first? Yeah. That's never how it works. For me, when things are being procrastinated, everything under the sun gets procrastinated, even the easy stuff, because I look at that, I'm like, gosh, once I do that, once I'm done with that, I got to do the hard stuff. Or I could just start with the hard stuff, but the hard stuff is hard stuff. And so I procrastinate everything under the sun when I'm in that mode, and it's just a disaster. By the time I have to get to it, the panic, the professional panic that you're going to get fired panic sets in. And
I trick myself and I procrastinate by actually doing something, but it's not the thing I really need to do. And sometimes I'll invent things to do.
Yeah.
That I don't actually need to do, but I'm doing something.
That's right. I should make a chart about something happening in my professional life that it doesn't help anything. It's minorly interesting. It doesn't make the problem any better. I'm glad that you've come up with this procrastinating.
I thought it was important.
Yes, absolutely. Can I ask you something, by the way? Yeah. I think we should take a moment to give each other reviews, because I have observed you in your element now a couple weeks back. You observed me in my element a couple weeks back, and I feel like we should take a moment to talk about each other's performances. Now, first of all, I was blessed enough to have a free afternoon. I went all the way out to West Plains to watch your band, The Theorists, perform at what may be your final performance. Has that been announced?
In the air.
I got a chance to watch you sing. We actually had Kira Griffin on, and she asked me if I would sing for you if I had to, and I was like, sure. Well, what's the problem with that? I haven't heard your band. When I answered that, I should have heard your band first. The answer is no. I will not sing for your band. Your singing style it took me by surprise. I thought it'd be like kind of singer-songwriting. No, man, you were very shouty and energetic. And
shouty.
Shouty is not the great way of saying it, but it's like a good version of, you ever hear Modest Mouse? Like a good version of Modest Mouse.
Sure,
and it's not like, yeah. So, and I enjoyed your show very, very much. I had a great time watching it.
Thanks.
And I've actually told you this in person, so this is not new news. But my favorite thing about your show was the pre-show patter that you do with the audience. And you're like, we're the Theorists. And they go, woo! And you say, we're here to rock your faces off. And they go, woo! And they're like, the name of our album coming out is Proof by Contradiction. And this is like Jared, the physics instructor, settles in and is like, so when you're trying to prove a concept, you're trying to come at the problem the opposite way, prove that doesn't work, and therefore and the crowd is totally crickets in that moment, because I think first of all they're ruminating on it, right? But second of all, is like, that's the first moment that
it's not the most rock and roll part. No.
I actually love that additional element. You merged my world with the rock world. That's great.
Well, thank you. And so for your review, I think you're referring to, I came to my first official politically active meeting.
That's right. And for those of you listening, you may check that off your bingo card.
That's right.
We brought it up again.
I'm worried about what this bingo card looks like. You mentioned it a few times, but I know some of the things of my own that are on there. If someone would like to make one of those, don't forget about our Teams page. Post us.
Yes.
There's another thing of the bingo card, right?
Yeah.
Post up on the Teams page the bingo card for Oh That's Cool podcast. But anyways, and you guys were talking about Ukraine, and all compliments. I mean, 40 students probably in there just packed the.
We were in the boardroom, believe it or not, which we never use. But that was actually, we had another room we want that we always like to use because it's kind of dingy and it feels very informal. And I think that makes people feel comfortable. And the boardroom is very fancy pants. But I'm wrong. It is fancy, but everybody was really
stop. And it was so many students participating. They seemed to really enjoy you as well. You kept kind of a short kind of briefing, talking about the facts.
Yeah, make sure we're all operating with the same set of facts here. Yeah,
and then
after that, I opened the floor.
You asked some questions to get people talking, but they didn't really need it. I mean, they were there. They were there to talk.
Yeah, isn't it great knowing that that talent is on our campus, and like it doesn't really need a degree to be unleashed, but if we can be a part of that process to unleash them, to prepare them for what's to come down the pipeline, you see the talent in that room, and sometimes if I even necessary here? Some of these guys bring so much intelligence already to the conversation. But if you could do a little bit of quality control and make their experience of exploring that talent more pleasurable for them, I'd say you've won the day.
Well, a huge part of that talent even being here starts with our guest today, who is the Director of College Admissions.
College Director of Admissions.
College Director
Very
of
close.
Admissions.
Jared.
I know it, but it's important. With us, of course, Jordan Schreiber. Welcome to the show.
Hey.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome. So happy to have you. Do you know that we have an audio record of talking about you already on this podcast? I think it was like episode, I think it was maybe the Jeffrey Johnson episode where we were talking. At the time, it was just being unveiled that Second Chance Pell was going to be brought to OTC, and that a PLS 101 class, and I manifested it. I screamed into the microphone that I wanted that opportunity. You and Greg French, got to give him credit as well. We're so gracious in making it happen. But before we even get into that, what is Second Chance Pell? How did you come to interact with it?
So Second Chance Pell is an experimental program that has come out from the Department of Education. Essentially what it boils down to is in 1994, there was a ban placed on Pell for prisoners. So incarcerated individuals could not use a federal Pell grant, which caused a lot of higher education institutions to pull out of the prison system, just simply because there was no way to fund them. So in this experimental process, which kicked off in 2015, with its first round, they were seeing, does education make a difference for the lives of incarcerated individuals and on recidivism rates, which, spoiler alert, it does.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad we had those studies conducted, but you're sitting across the table from two people who will scream that answer to you. We would have saved everybody a lot of time and money. They had just approached us.
Absolutely. I think we all knew the answer to this experiment, but that's a good experiment. You kind of know what's going to happen at the end of it, an educated guess.
Yeah.
OTC was lucky enough to be chosen in the second round of the Second Chance Pell experiment. So we were selected in 2019, and we were one of just 64 schools in the entire nation to be selected to be part of this program. And really what drove me to be...
Wow, I don't think I knew that.
Really?
Yeah. That's elite.
You're part of an exclusive club.
Yeah.
Right? So what drove me to get started with this... in recruitment, so before Director of Admissions, I did a lot of on-the-road recruitment for OTC, and part of that was visiting prisons and jails and juvenile justice centers and getting to interact with individuals who felt like their fate was sealed. This was it, that society would never give them a second chance. And
understandably, it's understandable why it's not true, but it's understandable why they would be led to do that socially and our policy wise. Yeah,
absolutely. There's a lot of enthusiasm about wanting to change, but the reality of what life after prison looks like is often pretty bleak, and trying to get a foothold out there in any realm, whether that's a job or education, can be overwhelming. And that's why we see a lot of individuals who go back to prison. That's the easier route. And that should not be the easiest route to take. And so my thinking was, if we could provide education while in prison, it can build confidence. It can show them a world of learning that is exciting and fuel hope again, that they can have dreams, that they could become something more than just taking whatever job comes their way because they just have to take the bare minimum. No, instead they could think about what they really want out of their life and what they could be and how they could take their experiences, take their knowledge of whether it be a past career or their new learning or just their on the streets experiences and make something of it for themselves. And if I could play a small role in that, then it was worth it.
I have the same perspective with the people in this building, the students in this building. And I want to give a small shout out to our friend Dane Galloway, who's another instructor for Second Chance Pell. English, I want to say?
Yes.
Okay. So before we get to, I think you already kind of answered this question, but I want to ask you straight up because the research, Jared and I could flatly tell you, education is going to make the incarcerated experience better. Why do you think that is? If you could speak from their perspective, what do you think they would say?
I think thinking about, just giving them an education, giving them something to engage in that involves future planning, involves critical thinking, involves getting them into this space of just something that has felt so off limits, that feels like you're just a criminal, no one could expect this of you. I think the enthusiasm and hope and that generates, it just inspires momentum for them, that they are like, if I can do this, I can do anything. I think about one of our gentlemen who has now left the program. Good note, he's out of prison now. And he told me that one of the most proud experiences of his life was receiving his certificate from OTC that he was on the chancellor's list. And
Special.
that he was going to frame it. And he's like, I've never had something of this nature that I've accomplished. And it's so moving to see that and what that can do for an individual. And I don't know what his future holds or what degree program he'll end up in. I know he was still trying to decide, but it gave him a sense of confidence and a feeling of belonging that he never really had. He always felt less than. And a lot of these individuals, we know that they don't just land into incarceration. They're coming out of environments of poverty, of cycles of drug abuse, incarceration within their families. They're most likely first generation college students. So they're coming out of experiences where all the odds are against them. And we know they face very, very high barriers to success. And so giving them some confidence that they too belong here. Yeah. They belong on our campus. That way, when they do step out from behind the prison wall, they know that they belong here just as any other individual does.
And boy, do they ever deserve to be on this campus, because as I believe I've shared with you, the average grades that I get in these courses, because I've done one in the spring and now one in the fall, put to shame my regular traditional student body. Now, part of that is because they have a lot more time to study. But on top of that, they contact me more proactively. They are extremely, when I had the chance to meet with them, they were incredibly open and gracious, and a couple of them had technical issues, and they shoved their tablets in my face, and they were like, I have technical issues, I promise. I had a couple of them email me and said, I got 7 out of 10, I'm so sorry. Listen, I'll fix this. I'm like, you got 7 out of 10. You're okay. And I just think that not only do these guys very much deserve to be on our campus, but can I add an addendum to what you said? I thought a very thoughtful answer to that question. I want to add what you said to my belief system, because education is inherently a forward-looking enterprise. And a lot of these guys, when you're incarcerated, the world around you seems to be telling you have nothing forward, you have nothing ahead of you. And I think that's a nice little window that education opens as well. So, I mean, just a matter of time. Let's get a physics class going and get Mr. Durden in on this action.
Well, more than just what education offers and should be, but I think is we have this particular importance in the role of a community college, right? As keeping that model of, and not even calling it a second chance, but just always having a path forward, right? Because that's a model we apply with the people that we love when we raise our children, when we, address just any student in the classroom. People make mistakes, right? But there has to be a path forward, because otherwise the alternative is you stay stagnant or you're sent back, right? And that's a way more apparent analogy when you talk about recidivism in prison. But I mean, it just happens in our classroom, right? A student makes a mistake. There's not a path forward. Instead, they no longer feel a part of the community, and then we lose them, and who knows where they end up.
Do you ever fear, Jared, that your class is part of the prison that the students are in? Because I've had this a couple times. Students take my class, maybe life circumstances get in the way, but for one reason or another, they kind of drop off the face of the earth, and there they are, re-enrolled in your class the next semester. And then the vast majority, they re-enroll. They're gonna be great. I've got a better relationship with them. We can get them across the finish line, but not always. And so it's a little bit like Groundhog Day for some of these students. I worry that my class is the prison.
I don't know if I would make that same analogy.
I worry that I'm the warden of my own of their own personal prison. I hope that's not the case. My goodness, but I have had a few students who are like, "Listen, I don't care about government. I just got to get the grade." And here they are the next semester and the semester after that.
That I've experienced, yes.
And I will say that I think, especially if you get a good instructor, and I don't know if I qualify, Dane certainly does, but if you get yourself a good instructor and they can open up a new talent for you, I think that's got to make you feel a little bit more, that's got to boost your incarcerated experience as well, don't you think?
Absolutely. I think about, I was thinking about all of the things when you invited me here that we've gone through with just a couple of years in Second Chance Pell and getting ready for it and starting it and all the technology stuff we've encountered. And just thinking about how just the very act of using their first name and calling them a student is huge. The prison system only refers to them as an offender with their last name. And they always know their prison ID number. They have to be ready to present that ID number. And they're not used to people calling them by their first name. They're not used to people referring to them as an identity outside of offender. And so, I think this education that we're providing, besides just the actual material, just in teaching them that they're worth something and that we view them as an equal human being to ourselves, and that we value their insight, we value their opinions, what they can contribute, and that they have a contribution that they can give to the world around them. So I do think that instructors like you and Dane are opening that up for them. I'm just the person they call when their tablet's not working. So I'm usually the one they're frustrated with, but but I do get to see it and hear from them about what those experiences mean to them. And even through what feels like a setback, whether it's the technology or having issues with the material, whatever it is, they are still so grateful for the experience. And that always gets to me, because I feel like, what space do you have to be in that you feel like you should be so grateful for the opportunity for education, where we're here and people outside of the wall are thinking, open admission, anyone can go, no big deal, just sign up. And here they realize how much of a privilege it is to get that education. And I really want them to see, like, of course you deserve it, and we're not doing it to, in a sense, to pity you or something like that. We're here to truly help you, because, Jared, to your point, they're our neighbors, they're our community. I think about, the beginning of Second Chance Pell, and even with the innovation grant, how many people just on OTC's campus of staff and faculty reached out to me and said, I have a family member, I have a friend, a neighbor, that they said that this mattered to them. So that was something that I was just blown away by. I didn't expect, in honestly a very conservative area, to have such support for such an initiative. But I was just blown away by our incredible family at OTC and how this impacts so many lives around us, even if you don't realize it.
So I know you're a part of the Student Learning Experience Task Force. You were involved as well in the design of the PMC's, what is that called? The
Innovation Lab.
Innovation Lab.
Yes.
But tell us a little about what you do just as your regular position as a college, because you do so much outside of that. But tell us a little bit about what your position as a director is.
Well, I'm really good at attending meetings and answering emails.
Sure. You can say that again.
That's the main position that I do at the college. But it's kind of evolved over time. I was telling you earlier, I just came into the position as the college director of admissions in April. Prior to that, I was really involved on the recruitment side. So everything about how can we draw students to the college, and had the very scary experience always of getting on the road and talking to teenagers.
That's scary?
They're scarier than the prisoners, I can tell you that. They don't find my jokes very funny.
No.
They just stare at you. And
They don't, and they're funny jokes.
Yeah.
they are. Thank you.
No
They're
doubt.
very
I have
funny
no
jokes.
doubt.
I understand.
I have no doubt that your jokes are top notch. Yeah.
I watch the TikTok. I use their language.
That's right.
But they still find me irrelevant. And now I'm finding I'm older than a lot of their teachers, which is not great either. But so I'm really involved still with anything that involves bringing students to the college, and now with how do we get them from application to actual in the seat, in the class, helping them go through the admissions process, navigate financial aid, making sure they've done their orientation, getting registered for the right classes for their career goals. So my whole job is focused on making that process work. So as part of that, this summer we hired a whole fleet of admissions counselors. So every student who applies to OTC gets an admissions counselor to help them with that process. So I used to be more of the very on the ground, front facing with the students, but now I get to do like the more structural stuff behind the scenes, and I love it. I love seeing when things work and seeing it make a difference for a student, whereas before maybe they wouldn't have gotten that proactive help. So, but really my job is anything and everything, and if anyone who needs swag, they always contact me. I think everyone believes I have a magical stockpile,
Unofficial swag
goodie
chief
bag.
somewhere that I have like a warehouse full of swag. I do not, but I'm always out trying to help, trying to give away stuff. But I always say I have the fun part of the job, right? I get to be like, yes, you're in, you're here.
Yeah.
We're so excited. And then the academics and stuff, someone else can deal with that
that's
down
right.
the road.
There's some statistics you were talking about that caught me off guard, but from the admissions side, one of them was how many students are on average enroll in that like first week of classes?
So if we of our applicants, like a percentage of our applicants actually make it to that first week.
No, I think he's saying, I think you're
Well, let's
asking.
do that first.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. So about 50% of our applicants matriculate to actual enrollment and getting to the class.
And then, okay, so how many enroll late? Like enroll in that first week of classes, or after a reasonable point in which you would want a student to enroll to be successful?
The majority of our enrollment comes at that time. So if you want to think of it in terms that scale, in August, before a fall semester, we will enroll more students than Drury will enroll in total.
That is, that was just eye-opening for me.
That's always why I bring that bias, because I know that answer. I bring that bias anytime that people are talking about voter registration. How would you change the system? I'd say I would change it to same-day voter registration. The day you vote is the day you can also register to vote. And people are like, what's the point of that? I'm like, you haven't worked at a community college. Community college, they're coming in right at the deadline to make sure that they can take a class. You change it to the same-day voter registration, you're going to see your turnout spike. I'm telling you right now.
Absolutely. I think we have so many students that come in right at that last second. And I think about we'll hit here in a few months, right at the January, all those New Year's resolutions come up. and then we'll see them right after we get back from break, ready to enroll. And we always want to be there to serve them. But I think where Jared was kind of going with that, we know those students aren't always our most likely to succeed, that generally they're the ones we lose because they weren't properly prepared. They didn't have financial aid in order. They didn't really have a conversation about what is an appropriate college load with working 2 jobs and a family.
Yeah.
So that is definitely, as that student learning task force, that is a prime question of how do we assist the students by providing that open access to our education, but also making sure we're setting them up for the best possible success.
Can you explain? I'm fascinated with all things PMC. The lab, did you say Imagination Lab? What is that?
It is an innovation lab.
Innovation.
Yes.
Can we start an imagination?
I would
too?
like that. Yeah.
Yes.
From community, I would like the dark room, the green room with the white stripes. You just make up anything.
What did they call that? They call
The Imaginarium or something?
Imaginarium.
Yeah.
But the actual thing that exists. Yeah, tell us a little bit about the Innovation Lab.
Do you want to ask us some questions about that imaginary thing that doesn't exist?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Tell me more. No, this is so cool. So if you haven't had a chance to go over there, you should definitely check it out. Go play with the stuff. Very hands-on. It's really designed for a younger audience. So looking at getting like grades 4 through 10 involved. Because if I go up to a student and tell them you should do mechatronics, they're like, is that like Megatron? What is
Right.
that? Right? They don't know. So it's getting them involved in the manufacturing process. So what this innovation lab does is allows students and younger children to come in and just engage in a hands-on way with the different manufacturing processes, whether they know it or not, that they're engaging with it. So there's a welding simulator. There's a robot that they can control. They can work on fidget spinners and see how that different weights and stuff affect that. So a very hands-on space that they can come and just play and get a good feel for the types of things that go into manufacturing and how that affects the world around them.
I like that approach because it doesn't focus on so much the what an actual admissions person might do, which is if you're looking to succeed here, this is a series of classes, this is the kind of skills you're going to need to pick up. That's not what this lab is about. This lab is about tapping into their energy, tapping into their and inspiring them, saying, oh, is this what this is? And being interested in kind of a broad area. So I think that's a real wise approach. Have you observed it in action? People,
I have.
Kids coming over and checking it out?
I've seen our college students checking it out in there playing with it. I think everyone is so fascinated by it. And I think what is so cool, just to your point, that all the students I've worked with as we're getting them, trying to help them get enrolled in college and thinking about it. When you ask a teenager, maybe a sophomore or a junior, what do you want to be when you grow up? They've heard that question like 500 times,
Since
first
they
of
were-
all.
Yeah.
And it changes 500 times
Exactly.
between then and
Right.
when
They have
actually
no
do something.
experience with anything, but they can tell you what type of things they like. Do you like taking things apart and putting them back together, seeing how they work? Do you like building computers, doing a video game, something like that, working outside, whatever that is? It's cool to see the light bulb come on. I'm like, you don't have to tell me the exact position you want to work in here, because I don't know how many maybe you guys started out with the career path in mind. You wanted to be teachers right from the get-go, and that's where it went. But that was not my pathway. And I don't think it is for a lot of students that they're like, you know what, someday I am going to be the college director of admissions at my local community
That
college.
wasn't what you wrote in second grade.
Exactly. So, it's our job to inspire that excitement about things, and that work can be fun, that you can do things you enjoy and that you're good at.
Especially, I like that this is a outreach tool specifically for grade schoolers, because we should all be aware, and I know this more intimately than most, that post high school your life will take infinite twists and turns. But if you can get a little fire in the belly for something and you see a path forward for it in high school, and you know exactly the college degree you want, you know exactly the career you want, we can help with that pipeline. and it's got to be invaluable, because I had just my personal experience. I had a lot of value in kind of wandering the academic wilderness for however many years, but I wouldn't recommend it for everybody. I think for most folks, the path of least resistance and a very rewarding path is something that if we can inspire you in that grade school, at 9th, 10th, 11th grade, hopefully set you on a pretty straightforward path to success.
Andrew, what was your youngest memory of saying what you wanted to be when you grow up?
I remember wanting to be a truck driver. I really liked playing with Hot Wheels, and I wanted to be a truck driver. What about you, Jared?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
In 7th grade, I was sure I was going to be astronaut was the youngest.
Okay, sure.
I want to be an astronaut.
Right, okay. I don't blame you for that. Dinosaur rider was not an option for you or anything like that? Just straight to astronaut when you were in grade school?
I was pretty practical as a kid, so
Sure.
I would have explained that wouldn't be possible as a job. So.
Okay, gotcha. How about you, Jordan?
How about you, Jordan?
Well,
Say admissions counselor.
It was.
Say admissions counselor. Say it.
Admissions counselor. No, honestly, I wanted to be an English teacher. That's absolutely what I wanted to do in grade school. Like, my mom even got me this, like,
I know why.
like secondhand desk where you tuck it in, like a grade school desk, and I would play like I was a teacher, had a chalkboard.
Yeah.
I just loved it.
I know why. You had a crazy, passionate English teacher, didn't you? That you
I
loved?
absolutely did.
Yeah, I
Yes.
was saying the same thing to Jennifer Dunkel, and she was giving me gruff about that. I was like, you English teachers do not understand. If you are super passionate and energetic, we take to you like flies to a blue light. English is super fun when you have an instructor as passionate about it as Jennifer Dunkel, as an example.
Absolutely. Until I got to diagramming sentences in high school, and then it wasn't quite as thrilling as before, but it was great in grade school.
Yeah, the learning about subjects and predicates takes the zing out of it a little bit, but hey.
Is zing a predicate?
Zing, no,
zing is a onomatopoeia.
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 Yeah, that's right.
So
I'm standing up for you, Jennifer Dunkel. We got to have somebody in here to keep the English on the rails.
So something we like to ask our guests to get them to know them better. Who's someone in your life, or someone that you read about, or someone you looked up to, someone that's you feel has inspired you?
Oh, wow. Why didn't you prep me for this before this?
We like the gut responses.
Right?
Yes.
Okay.
Off the cuff.
So, off the cuff.
Yep.
I would say, I'm an OTC grad. And I had, when I was just starting out at OTC, I had Debbie Thompson.
Sure.
And I had her for Intro to Philosophy. And I was so lost because I was in culinary arts. That was what I started out here. And I didn't bring you guys any treats because it didn't work out.
Yeah, what the heck?
Right? And I was so lost and like ready to leave school. And I was a high achiever in school. I was doing well. There was no reason for me to walk away, but I was so lost. And she kind of saw that in me, grabbed me and said, what's going on here? Can we talk? And so has become a lifelong mentor and friend and helped me find classes that felt like a kid in a candy store for me. She's like, take something you're interested in, do that, and just start with that. Mm-hmm. Stay there. And it really worked out for me. And I went down the path of religious studies. So that's where I ended up getting my bachelor's and master's in that. And so a very well-qualified Starbucks barista, if you're wondering.
Yeah, sure.
So, I've always given my mom a hard time. You always said, I can do anything you want. I'm like, well, STEM makes good money. You could have pushed me there, but that's okay.
Right.
Yeah, liberal arts degree. Let's go for that. But
I worked at 911 with a master's degree in communication, and several coworkers of mine were like, you don't even need a degree to work here. Why'd you get a master's to work at it? I was like, hey, listen, life takes twists and turns, okay?
It does. Yeah. It does. So yeah, Debbie had a huge influence on me, and I look at how she interacted with her students and continues to do that. And I hope to do something of a small part of that, whether it's with the students I help get through the door, or even I teach on the side, so with my students in my classes as well.
Was Intro to Philosophy one of those candy store courses?
It was.
I have a philosophy minor myself. I still remember things from my philosophy classes 25 years ago. Ethics and epistemology and religious philosophy, all kinds of stuff.
I took Intro to Philosophy here in like 99 or 2000, and I can't remember this professor's name. He was fantastic. He was at that time period, older gentleman with gray hair, and he was always just kind of aloof, like just what you picture when you think philosophy professor, right? And I remember he used to sit outside. It was no matter what. He used to always sit outside when we used to have that wall that kind of ran in between IC and NKM. But anytime you see him in the hall, if you'd say, "Hey, what's up?" I can't remember his name. He'd look up and go, "The ceiling," and it was like, just such a great guy. I can't remember his name though, but I really enjoyed it. I still to this day remember his class, and he would always talk about what ought we do.
I still remember my ethics course that I took at Truman State, and we took it in a dorm classroom. It was a very wonky classroom. It didn't make any sense, but I still remember sitting there to this day having ethical conversations, and this very pear-shaped instructor who would always have his head tilted up to the ceiling when you'd answer something, and he'd say, yeah, and he'd respond immediately with something to upend whatever moral code you've outlined. And that class was so mind-bending and enjoyable. To this day, I still remember. I still love everything I learned in logic. I don't want to turn this into a big philosophy thing, sure. But Jordan, I'm with you.
So you're one of the last in a series of this question to answer. So this is important. We're retiring this version of the question at the end of the year.
Ooh, I didn't know this.
So we've got the plan now. I got the plan for the T-shirts is in action. That's going to kind of end it. And the way the scheduling works out, it'll probably be retired at the end of the year.
Okay.
Gumby versus Mr. Ed, battle to the death. Who wins? And why?
How prepped were you for this one?
I was not prepped for this one. Obviously, when I said I was an avid listener of this podcast, I've made it about 10 minutes in for the ones I was trying to prep myself on.
My favorite podcasts are actually podcasts like this because they allow your brain to zone out and then you can re-enter later.
Absolutely.
And that's why I like sports podcasts a lot. And I appreciate the existence of investigation podcasts where like, we're going to blow the doors off the pharmaceutical industry. But if you zone out, I meant to say, for like 5 minutes and you come back, you're like, wait, who are these people? What are they doing? Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, I mean, I am hoping season 2 is more of crime murder solving version.
We're working on it.
Yeah, like I'm
it's oddly kind of boring around here.
That's the hot thing right now. So if you could work on that, solving a murder. But I would have to say Gumby is the winner. Like,
and why?
You're preaching to half a choir.
Okay, all right. I just feel like, I don't know. First of all, gut instinct. I just like the dude is flexible. Yeah. You never know what he's going to throw at you next. He throws? Well, just you never know how he's going to move.
No, that's right. Yes.
Right?
Very
like,
unpredictable.
What is the next move? And that's why I just feel like Gumby would take it.
Yeah, and we've mentioned the fact that he does have the phasing ability. Very, very important to mention because I mean, in the off chance that like Mr. Ed gets the better hand of him in a given moment, he can escape through a wall. Come to his senses, come back in and wreak havoc some more. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, you've won Andrew over.
Yeah.
Perfect.
We haven't had enough Gumby answers recently, so I'm glad we're finally course correcting.
I'm glad, though, that people just aren't pandering to you, though, because that would be an easy out, you know?
There have been at least a couple that have been trying to upset me deliberately, and
That's
I know
true.
who you are, and I know who you are.
But those are fun.
Revenge will be swift and severe.
Okay, so maybe it is time to retire that question. I'm starting to get on board, but we needed a good collection, right?
This is about to be a murder podcast of a different type entirely.
So, Jordan, we brought you here because you are a recipient of one of the Innovation Celebration grants, and we've kind of been doing a theme of that lately to get people excited about the upcoming. For 2023. So tell us what your project was and how it's going and what you were able to do with that $10,000 award.
Absolutely. So highly, relevant to the Second Chance Pell, which really I would say that kicked off my passion for the Second Chance Pell experiment. But the innovation grant specifically was for creating a space on campus, a community of individuals who have been impacted by the justice system. So people who are formerly incarcerated, helping them address some of the extra barriers that they may face as they come in. So we started, so a little thing happened, you may remember or not, in 2020, something happened that kept us from meeting in person for a while. So it was a really strange ride because I won the innovation grant in that February, and then COVID happened.
Yeah.
And so that threw off a lot of what was going to happen. So we ended up having virtual meetings that fall. And I do think it would have, I wouldn't say it wasn't successful. We had several participants and they did really well compared to non-participants in their classes, but and their retention rates were great. But I wish we could have had that in-person experience at that time. But we brought them together, had several guest speakers we'd meet about once a month, talked about like how to talk about a record on your resume, how to talk about it in an interview. We talked about like budgeting and finance, like avoiding like the paycheck loans and all of that, payday loans, and like the true cost of those. And we also had a volunteer from the legal aid come down and they talked about expungement. So the expungement process, like how can an individual get something off of their record? And it has become easier in the state of Missouri in recent years. So that was great, offering that free advice and willing to set up appointments to talk about that for some people who had things on their record that were coming up for employment, but really had been a long time or something that really just didn't need to be there anymore. And we also kind of guided students through the process. I don't know how familiar you are with the process of, if you have a criminal record, but finding a job is just crazy hard. And then add in if you want to do something that requires a professional licensure of any kind. There is no like yes and no list. And It all varies based on the licensure you want. So we also like talked with them about that. We wouldn't want someone to go into a field that they really couldn't get a job in, but talking about like why they wanted something or what that meant to them and how we could turn that into something that worked. So we did that group for about a year and a half is what we ended up doing. And now we've had the cool opportunity to integrate it into our student success model. So the community resource specialists are actually kind of heading this up now. So they are now any student who applies to OTC, says they have a record of some kind, a felony record, we're doing specific outreach with them to get them really integrated into our campus community, feeling like they're wanted. That was another big piece of the innovation grant, was creating literature that was very welcoming to that population. Like when we would visit a prison or jail, and giving the heads up, hey, we're going to ask the question and we have reasons that we have that box on our application. And that's its own debate about whether or not a school should have that or an employer should have that. But we do at OTC. So giving them a heads up that this is not a barrier to you coming to us, and it's to help you, not to hinder you. And that we don't just tell all your instructors, we don't tell everyone, you're not walking around with this tattooed on your forehead. So really trying to use that money to also create a welcoming space for these individuals to come in. And then finally, on the very practical side, anyone who has been incarcerated on the application, it asks them if they've lived in a congregate setting, and prison is one of those, which would require a TB test. And that's a state law in Missouri to ask those questions and require a TB test by their second semester. And a TB test is about $75.
Oh, I was about to ask, what's the problem with that? That's a problem.
That's a problem. For someone who's just trying to get on their feet and get started and get something going, that's a real barrier. So we also used that money to pay for TB tests for individuals to help them get that cleared off to where they could continue their education. And we also paid for some bus passes for individuals who are facing transportation issues. So really trying to, I think, kind of a precursor to the bigger model of student success with the community resource specialist, but trying to tackle some of those non-academic needs that would be huge barriers to success in the end.
And this is one of the reasons why, Dr. McGrady has talked before about how we need to make sure every door is the right door. That is fine as far as it goes, very important. But I also think some students need a lot more doors than others. What we are doing for these students that you are helping and have helped with that grant, and now sounds like a new enrollment program, is they are having to get support in so many different areas. In particular, life support with the bus passes, medical support. They're having to get academic support. And this is one of the reasons why it's important to take a holistic approach with students in general. They are almost like the student population that we've been speaking about for most of this podcast is really just a microcosm of how we need to better be serving our student body as a whole. And what they are showing, these students that I have in my Second Chance Pell class, and the students that, I don't know, let's hear from you on this in a second, but the students in my class are showing that if you invest in them, that investment pays back. It pays off. It doesn't just go somewhere. You're not just flushing it down the toilet. You're creating something that they are showing me fantastic grades, great communication. They're understanding the concepts really, really well. How are you seeing this work for the students that you're helping with in that program?
Absolutely. So when we really dove into trying to convince the college to give me $10,000 and going into those stats.
You have to say it like that.
Exactly. As I got on stage and tried not to act like I was so nervous to talk to everyone when everybody's like, public speaking's your job. It'll be no problem. Okay, but
that's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people. It was nerve wracking. But I would say that yes, it is an absolute worthy investment. And when we looked at those stats, it was abysmal how many actually we retained of those students. And it's just thinking about that hope and that enthusiasm just being crushed by maybe what, from an objective perspective on the outside, may feel like not that big of a barrier, but it was enough. It was enough for them to walk away, or feeling like someone didn't care or didn't feel like they should be here, or whatever that was, whatever their reason was.
And honestly, it doesn't even have to be that big of a barrier.
No.
If I just put a bunch, and I don't want to get on a political thing here, but if you just put a bunch of small barriers, you can weed out a ton of people from just repetitive small barriers. But anyways, your point.
Absolutely. So, I would say that just the amount of students we didn't retain was just terrible in this field. And it was just like, whoa, we've never really dug into this data before. And so when we actually did the program and looked at that, the year over year, we were retaining 75% of the students who participated in the program.
Oh my gosh.
And they were also the collective cumulative GPA was above a 3.0 for them. It was a huge success. And
they're good students.
Absolutely. And what was really cool about the program when we were doing some of those more group sessions, we had students who were just out and we had students who had been out for a long time. So we almost had some mentorship just naturally popping up there. And that was really cool. We had some students who were a little bit further along in their education and some that were just getting started there. And I think the thing that I've learned through my journey with it is to, just as they face setbacks, that in my journey in helping them, that I will face setbacks too. Our program will face setbacks, whether that's in technology, whether that's in just the prison rules of trying to help, or, life that happens, then I'm like, oh man, this person was already down and out and then life kicked them again. That they can count on us to persist for them, that we can always be an advocate for them, that we are not going to be the people who gave up on them. And I think about one of our students who has now exited the program again with Second Chance Pell. This is another student than the one I mentioned earlier. I don't know how many times I've talked on the phone with him this semester, but he is a great guy. But I think part of this program, whether that's in through the innovation grant or whether that is through the Second Chance Pell experiment, we're teaching resiliency. We're teaching that maybe the easy option isn't always the best option, to throw your hands up and say, well, I'm not doing this. And we've had to have some very tough come to Jesus moments, right? I had to say, if you walk away now, you're not punishing the system. You're the one that's going to have the balance at the end of the day. And he stuck with it, which was great. Like, he took some time to cool off and was not mad at me anymore. And then we worked through it. But ultimately, I think that's a value of it too, the investment. We're teaching resiliency for individuals who have found alternate ways of navigating a difficult system, and teaching them that if they persist, there is reward at the end. There is good ROI.
Oh my gosh, I'm so ready to charge through a wall right now listening to you talk about this. That's why I was so excited when this was coming out, because, you know, Jared and I don't just teach for the paychecks. It's nice, but it's not the only reason we do it. We do it because it is rewarding, because what this education can mean to people. And when I heard this program was coming out for these, what you got approved and what the Department of Education approved, I was like, this is it. This is the mission statement embodied. They are the mission statement embodied.
If Sarah Bargo's listening, we just got pitched a great slogan for the school. OTC, we are not the people that are going to give up on you.
Oh,
I really like that.
yeah. We just put Jordan in the commercial.
That's right.
On the billboard. How are you
boy.
billboard ready, Jordan?
Oh boy, you know, I have the face for radio, so
No.
I don't know that I'm the billboard.
You're talking to two guys on the podcast, okay?
That's fair.
Yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, Sarah Bargo, obviously, you have a dream, we have a plan. That was me. No, it wasn't. But, yeah, I think, yes, we are the people who won't give up on you. I think that is ultimately what it is, and that is our commitment as staff, as faculty, all of that. And that's what I've loved in working in higher education, that even when it's frustrating, even when it feels like things are stacked against you, that you have people who genuinely care about the people who are in their classrooms, that I care whether you show up tomorrow. And I care that you have all these things going on at home that could be preventing things from keeping you successful, rather than just saying like, well, you didn't get the test done. Sorry. Like, that was on you, without considering all the other factors that make them human.
Which I think is our layman understanding of education, that it is the material that you need to learn and you're on your own in the process of it. And one thing that I hope more instructors bring into the classroom is the fact that we're teaching you as a human, not just as a person on a screen necessarily, that we are far more, I would like to think a lot of us are far more flexible and far more adjustable than I think the lay person would understand college education as being. And in addition to that, people like yourself, the OTC Foundation, Dina Davies. Thank you. These people are willing to reach through the education into your personal life, if invited, and alleviate your life in ways that you perhaps hadn't anticipated. But, you know, and this comes back to a conversation we had with Jennifer Dunkel not that long ago. Even though we're helping you in non-academic ways, it will help you the entire academic process.
Absolutely. And I think about, you know, like you had said earlier, this is just a microcosm of our student population, right? I can think about all these different groups we serve who have their own barriers that we're coming into. Like, even last week we have students from Foster Adopt Connect on campus, and talk about barriers, like coming out of the foster system, and how do you navigate aging out of that and then continuing your education. And we also know that's another population where retention is not there. So, you know, at the end of it, like, yes, great. We you know, have to have students to have a college, but the impact we're making for these students for not giving up on themselves is huge.
Well said.
Well said.
Anything you could possibly say, Jared, to add to that?
I mean, we've learned
One of the best answers I've heard I mean,
Absolutely, and just the entire episode.
Yeah.
We were one of 64 colleges that actually got chosen in 2019 to do a Second Chance Pell, which if a program that if you hadn't heard about before, we learned about the amazing work it's doing. But I really like hearing how much it was. More than just, okay, here's some money we can take, but that we've created this infrastructure to address that community and really focus on their success,
Valuable.
not just their
so
income,
valuable.
right?
Absolutely. If we were going just off of the amount of work it takes for our 19 students, it just the ROI would not be there. But we, I have to commend our executive leadership on making a real commitment to helping this population succeed. And I will say, I don't think I said this earlier, but full Pell restoration comes back in July 2023. It's no longer an experiment. It was written into one of the CARES Act that a bipartisan effort, there is no longer a ban on Pell for prisoners.
Fantastic.
So
Can you just say that again, please?
yes, July 1st of 2023, the ban on Pell for prisoners goes away.
Wow.
So the experiment worked.
Wow.
We showed what we always knew to be true. But, we're finally dealing with some of this tough on crime, ideas and realizing that it is truly rehabilitation. That's what we're seeking, and making people productive members of society, helping them, realizing that they are not just someone who probably woke up and said, okay, today I'm going to commit a crime. There are a lot of things that go into that. And so, we have a leg up, I'd say, because we've already been working with the prison system, but all incarcerated individuals will have access to higher education next year.
You know what I call that? It's not hard on crime. It's smart on crime. Yeah.
There you go.
I'll be leaving now. That's the
Drop
best.
the mic.
That's the best thing I could possibly.
So remember earlier when we were talking about, it doesn't make sense why they don't laugh at the jokes always. I think I might need to change my. But I didn't know that. Did you know that, Andrew?
I did not know that.
Now you do.
Thank you.
Great job. Thank you so much.